Hi, I'm Lauren Fellers with the Pikes Peak Library District. My pronouns are she and her, and it's the last week of July, so we are going to be celebrating Harry Potter's birthday. So in the Harry Potter book and movies, there's an iconic scene where Hagrid shows up and tells Harry that he's a wizard and gives him a birthday cake. And I am going to be recreating that birthday cake. So in the book it's described as a sticky chocolate cake, and in the movie we see it's a layer cake with icing that's pink colored and then green frosting that says Happy Birthday Harry. So we're going to be doing our best to recreate that today. Fortunately, Hagrid isn't too great of a baker, so I feel okay if I mess this up. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this. It's a little bit of a more complicated recipe than your standard just sheet cake, so I'm going to first go over some of the supplies that you might need. Before we get started on the recipe, I'm just going to go over some of the supplies you might need for this. So first of all, you're going to need measuring cup, dry measuring cup, teaspoons, a pair of scissors, a knife, a spoon. It's also nice to have spatula and whisk as well, if you've got those on hand, to mix the batter up later. You're going to need a couple different mixing bowls, so a tiny one for liquids, a medium-sized one for the dry ingredients, and then something you're going to beat it in. I'm using this stand mixer back here, so that's my third bowl. If you don't have that many bowls, you can wash them out in between using them for the most part. You're also pretty crucially going to need an oven, because we are going to have to bake this cake. And you're going to need something like a hand mixer or a stand mixer like this one, because it would be a real pain to have to beat this by hand. Other things that might be nice to have are parchment paper or wax paper, because we want to line our cake pans. And we're going to grease them as well, but this will really help them pop out without ripping and losing a lot of the cake. You would also need 2 cake pans, or you could have 1 cake pan and then just dump out the first cake, put in the second set of batter, bake it, dump out the second cake, let them cool. So you can get around having 2. These are 9.5-inch cake pans. The recipe that I'm using suggests 8.5, so already this is going to be a little bit shorter than your average cake. So you can see you can kind of adjust to what you actually have in your kitchen. If you need to make this a sheet cake, you need to make it a sheet cake, and we'll just see how it comes out. Then I also have some stuff that's optional but kind of nice. So I've got some wire cooling racks that I'm going to set the cakes on. You don't need to do this, but it just helps with cooling them later on. And then this I've never used before, but it's for spreading frosting, and I thought it would be fun to try it out on this cake. You can just do this with a knife. But this massive knife is a lot more fun to use, so that's why I pulled it for this one. And then last but not least, you will need something to grease your cake pan. I've got this Crisco spray, but if you have shortening or something like that, you can also grease with that. So okay, let's go ahead and jump into this. So because I've never made a chocolate layer cake before, I decided to take one from a cookbook. This one's called The Best Recipe by the editors of Cooks Illustrated. And the particular recipe in here is called Chocolate Layer Cake, and it's a Velvet Devil's Food Layer Cake, which sounds like a sticky chocolate cake to me. So the ingredients you're going to need for this recipe are 1/2 cup of cocoa powder, 2 teaspoons of an instant coffee or instant espresso powder, and we're going to be mixing this into hot water later on, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter, so that's 1.5 sticks of butter, 2 eggs, 1 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, so that's just your standard flour, you don't need special baking flour for this, and 1 1/4 cup of white sugar as well. So once you have all of these things together, you're ready to make your chocolate layer cake, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so there are 2 things we need to do before we start making our batter. Number 1, we need to go ahead and preheat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And number 2, we're going to go ahead and line our cake pans with parchment paper. So just cut off a square of parchment paper, trim it into a circle that'll fit in the bottom of your pan. Don't worry if it's not like a perfect circle. It'll work just fine. And we're gonna grease it closer to when we actually put this in the oven. So for right now, we're just gonna put our liners into our pans and set them aside for when our batter is done. Okay, so let's jump into making the batter. The first thing we're going to do is take a small bowl. You'll want it to be heat proof because we're going to be pouring boiling water into this. And you're going to measure out 1/2 cup of cocoa. And I've got a 1/4 cup here, so I'm using smaller measure in the hopes of spilling less, although that's probably fruitless. Here's a 1/4 cup. And here is, oh, that was my oven, finished preheating, 1/2 cup. And we'll set that aside. And then we're going to go ahead and measure 2 teaspoons of instant coffee powder. It may take a couple packets here. So I have measured out 1 cup of water, and I'm going to go ahead and heat this up in the microwave. You could also heat this on the stove or on a kettle, whatever you have on hand. We're just going to heat our cup of boiling water here, and we're going to pour it straight into this lovely coffee and cocoa mixture. Okay, our cup of water is boiling, so we're going to go ahead and pour this into our cocoa and espresso mixture. And now we're going to mix this until it's smooth. And this is a very small bowl, so I'm just being careful not to spill this. But the cocoa and the coffee will start dissolving, and I'm just trying to make sure that there aren't any clumps or chunks in here so that we have got a nice smooth addition to our cake batter. Now the reason we're doing this first is that we need it to cool to room temperature before we add anything else to it or add it to anything else. So once you finish mixing this until it is smooth like this, you're just going to set it aside and let it cool down. Next things next, while our coffee mixture is cooling, we're going to go ahead and get our dry ingredients mixed and ready to go. So we're going to measure out 1 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. This is a 1/4 teaspoon, so I'm going to be measuring out 2 of them. Perfect. And then also a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. So let me do my 2 1/4 teaspoons of that. And in baking, it is pretty important. We need to make sure we're getting the exact measurements on here. So in cooking, we do kind of a lot of things to taste or to our personal preferences. While you're learning baking, it's pretty important to follow the exact proportions here. Because it can really impact the outcome even if it's off by small amounts. So just be careful when you're measuring those and make sure you've got that 1/2 teaspoon of each and the 1 1/4 cup of flour. And then you're just going to go ahead and real quick mix those together. And then we can set this aside and we're going to start working on the butter and egg mixture. Now we need our 1 1/2 sticks of butter to be softened. So I've had them sitting over here on the stove to get them nice and soft. You can also soften them a little bit in the microwave there. We just want to make sure we're not working with cold butter, right? So go ahead and get your butter ready to go, and then also get out your 2 eggs for this. The other thing I'm going to do is pre-measure my 1 1/4 cup of white sugar. So that way I can start beating my butter, gradually adding my sugar, adding my eggs, and I'll just have everything sitting beside me and I won't have to go and prepare those ingredients while I'm mixing. And that's pretty important for this because we're trying not to over mix. We just want to make sure we get it to the right stages, and I'll walk you through that as we're beating it all together. Okay, so we went ahead and we mixed our butter mixture. We added 1 1/4 cup of sugar to it, and we went for about 30 seconds just on the butter, and then we went for 3 to 4 minutes on the sugar. I was gradually pouring the sugar in while I mixed it on this medium-high setting, and you can see now it is nice and light and fluffy, and it is ready for us to add our 2 room temperature eggs. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the eggs one at a time. So I'm going to crack the first one into here. I'm going to beat the mixture for a full minute, and then I'm going to crack the second egg in, and I'm going to beat the mixture for another full minute. So we're going to be doing 2 total minutes of extra mixing here. Let's get started. Okay, so I cracked my first egg in here, and then I washed my hands. Now I'm going to turn it to that medium-high setting, and we're going to beat for 1 full minute here. All right, egg number 2 is in. I have washed my hands again, and now we are going to beat again for 1 minute. Okay, now we have finished beating our butter, egg, sugar mixture, and we're ready to start gradually adding the cocoa mixture we made before and the dry ingredients. Now before we can add the cocoa mixture, there's one last thing we need to do. It's cooled to room temperature, and now it is safe for us to go ahead and mix in our vanilla extract to it. Once we've got that in, we're going to go ahead and start mixing, adding 1/3 of the dry mixture, 1/3 of the cocoa mixture, mix it, add the next third, mix it, add the final third, mix it, and then we are ready to start baking our cake. So here we have our cooled room temperature cocoa mixture, and we're going to add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And then we're going to go ahead and mix this. And once it's mixed, we are all ready, and we can go ahead and start adding our dry mixture and this liquid mixture into the butter, sugar, egg mixture that we made. Here we go, we're starting to mix. If you're me, you've already spilled. Excellent. And we're just beating until it's incorporated. I'm going to scrape down the sides a little bit and add my second third. We don't want to overbeat here. There you go, the second third is in now, and you can see we're beating on the lowest mixing setting here. We really don't need to beat this too hard. We're just making sure we're incorporating that dry mixture. I'm going to pause in just a second, scrape down the sides, and add my last third. Okay, that's the last third. Here we go. Once we've got this incorporated, we're going to do one last scrape down of the side, beat it for about 15 more seconds so it's nice and smooth and silky, and we are good to go. Now I'm going to go ahead and grease my cake pans. I actually found a block of shortening, so I'm going to use that, and you just kind of go all the way around the inside here. Really want to coat it nice and thick with shortening here. And then I'm going to sprinkle some flour onto this guy, tap the excess off, and we will be ready to go. Alright, here we are, greased, dusted with flour, ready to go. So we're going to set these aside, and as soon as our batter is done, we can pour it straight into here, and from there, straight into the oven. Next things next, I'm going to go ahead and take this over to those 2 cake pans I greased, and I'm going to divide it evenly between the 2 of them, so half into one, half into the other, and I will see you when I've got it in there. Alright, so I have divided my batter between the 2 pans, and now I'm going to go ahead and pop this in the oven. The recipe instructions say 23 to 30 minutes. I always check early because every oven's a little different. And what we're going to do is I'm going to meet back with you in about 18 minutes, and we are going to test these with a toothpick. See you then. Alright, so the key when we're testing this cake, we're going to take our toothpick, we're going to stick it in the middle. What we want is for this to come out clean, or with maybe just a crumb or two, because this is a devil's food cake, so it's a little bit more crummy. But we're going to go ahead and poke this right in the middle there. We also want to make sure this is firmer, right? If it's pure liquid in the middle, just close the oven again. It needs to go longer. Okay, I've got my cakes on my cooling racks, and they are going to sit here for 10 minutes to cool off, and then we're going to flip them out onto these racks. Alright, our cakes have been cooling for 10 minutes now, so it's time to go ahead and turn them out onto the racks. So first things first, we're just going to take a butter knife, run the knife around the edge, make sure our cake hasn't stuck to the pan here. And now I'm going to go ahead and flip this out very carefully and trying not to destroy it. Voila! And now we gently peel off this parchment paper, and we are going to let this cool completely before we ice it. That's probably going to be about 2 hours from now. So I will see you guys back in 2 hours. Now, of course, no cake could be complete without the frosting. between you and me, the buttercream frosting that this cake recipe calls for is really tough to make, and I'm a little bit lazy. So instead we're going to be making cream cheese frosting, which is really delicious and also really easy to make and doesn't require you to refrigerate it for hours, stirring every 15 minutes. So that is a big plus in my book. Now, in the movie, this cake has pink frosting. What I'm going to do is use a little bit of red food coloring, but you could use any color or no food coloring. It won't add anything to the flavor. And then at the very end, we're going to go ahead and put Happy Birthday Harry on the top. It uses green icing in the book and the movie, so I have this little green icing tube for that. You could also mix, set aside some of the frosting, mix in green food dye and use that, or you could write nothing on the top. It's up to you. This is an optional piece, but it might be a nice little thing if you have some on hand or an easy way of getting some. So the ingredients we're going to need for the cream cheese frosting are 12 ounces of cream cheese, 4 teaspoons of sour cream, 6 tablespoons of butter, unsalted butter again, so same as what we were using in the cake. If you still have that half stick left over, you can use that for this as well. You're going to need salt, and you're going to need vanilla extract again. And the very last thing that you're going to need is 1 1/4 cup of confectioner sugar or powdered sugar. They're the same thing, you'll just sometimes see it in stores under both of those names. So get your powdered sugar, and you'll need those 1 1/4 cup measures again. You'll need those teaspoon measures again. And you're going to need, of course, a bowl to mix all of this in. So let's get started. Now, once again, the butter and the cream cheese now in this frosting recipe need to be softened. So go ahead and get them out now. Okay, I have put in my 12 ounces of cream cheese and my 6 tablespoons of softened butter. Now I'm going to add 4 teaspoons of sour cream, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and then I'm going to start measuring out my powdered sugar. Okay, I just added the sour cream and the vanilla and the salt, so now I'm going to measure out 1 3/4 cup of powdered sugar. Okay, now as you can see, we are mixing all of our ingredients together. I'm going to turn it up slightly. Medium-high speed. Doesn't need to go that long, and I'll just scrape down the sides, do one last mix, and we are ready. You can see this one comes together really fast. And now I'm going to add a little bit of red food dye to get that pink coloring that we saw in the movie. Mix that. Oh yeah. Looks good, so we are now ready to ice our cake. Okay, welcome. We are ready to begin the big adventure where I'm sure this will go horribly wrong, which is icing. Now, I've already made some horrible mistakes, so I was told by the recipe, and did not do this, to transport my cakes onto a pan or something that I had lined with parchment paper. Didn't do that. And that's because afterwards you'd like to be able to remove the parchment paper and not have frosting on it. But look, I'm eating this for myself. I don't really care if there's frosting all over the pan. So that's how we're doing it. The other tip they gave me that I did not follow was to put a dollop of frosting, like a little bit, on the bottom of the parchment paper lined pan that you use. And the reason for that is so the cake doesn't move around while you're frosting it. So probably that's going to happen. We're just gonna live with it. It's fine. So here we've got our lovely bright pink icing that we've made. And we're just gonna start doing what they told us to do for the first time today, which is to take a big dollop and put it right in the middle, and then to start spreading that around. Now, this is probably going to fail because earlier when I was picking this cake up to put it on the pan, I dropped it. Don't do that. That is my advice to you. Don't drop your cake. It's bad for it. So you can't see this very well, but there's a big fissure down this part of the cake where I dropped it and it cracked. It's not entirely cracked, but it's not the most attractive cake you've ever seen, is I guess what I would say. Now, we don't really care how this middle part looks, and the reason we don't care how this middle part looks is that it's going to be hidden by the upper cake, which I may also drop, who knows. But right now we're just trying to lay down that lovely layer of frosting. It's nice to have a massive knife like I have. Why? Because it makes it a lot less annoying to spread this. However, this will work just fine with a butter knife or anything else that you have on hand. So let's just do what they tell us to do and lay down this rough layer. I'm already feeling like, oh, that part of the cake I dropped just came off. I'm already feeling like this is not enough frosting. Probably you should make a double recipe. So I'll go back and add that in the instructions at the beginning. And what we're gonna do now that we have put a little bit of frosting between the layers is make the daring move to transport cake number 2 on top of cake number 1. Now we failed the first time. It's very likely we'll fail the second time. We're just gonna try it. Advice that I found in a different book, but not this one, told me that when I turned my cake out onto my drying rack or cooling rack or whatever you're using, I should have put like a cardboard round or something underneath it so that I could then lift that cardboard up and transport it onto this. That didn't happen, so it isn't happening. But you should probably try to do that. Like if you used the wax paper or parchment paper, you could probably just pick it up and slide it onto here. We're just gonna wing it. That's what we're doing. So let's see what happens. Okay, this is the thing I'm gonna try. Don't try this at home. Do something much smarter at home than what I'm doing. Huh? Oh. We've lifted it onto parchment paper, so maybe this isn't a total catastrophe. Now we need to flip this upside down onto our beautifully iced cake. Let's try this. Just like gently. Aha! Gotta surprise the cake, you've gotta sneak up on it. And when you do that, you can do what I just did. Now, you can see these are lined up, not perfectly, but relative to the way that I just flipped it, pretty good. If you had been carrying this gently on something else and could slide it off, I can see where you could maybe not violently throw it on top of the first cake. But we live and we learn. So now we're gonna repeat what we did with the middle layer on top, put icing, spread all the way around. This is not enough icing, so I'm gonna get where I get and I'm gonna make more. That's the way it goes. You will have made your double recipe and you will not have that circumstance. But you know, it's all about experimentation. So we've got our dollop in the middle, right, to anchor it and start spreading. And then also I'm gonna put some here to drag down to the edges. You do what you gotta do. Now, you can see we've started spreading out our center bit and dressing our cake. Is this the most beautiful cake ever? No, but neither was Hagrid's. And no one sat on this yet, although it has undergone similar trauma. Okay. I'm feeling like I'm probably not going to be going to bakery school anytime soon. But you know, this is definitely icing, and it is definitely on the cake. So, credit where credit is due. I feel like I've accomplished something here. Look at that. We are covering the worst parts of our cake. You know what? This may go actually around. This may be enough icing. Now the cake here, remember I threw it not super evenly. So what you're seeing here is that the left part of the cake is hanging over because it's not lined up. Don't do that. That makes it very difficult to spread icing. And we've lost the back side of the cake here. You can't see it. I could have just not said that. You wouldn't know. But you know, it's going. Beautiful. Beautiful. Here we go. We're making our way around the back. Let's see if I can cement some of this falling cake. Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah. We're getting to the bottom of our icing supply, which is making things tough. But we're gonna keep going. We're not giving up. Okay. Feeling like that's about as good as it's getting. Let's do one last little layer over here, just to really seal this beautiful cake. Ooh, okay, well, okay. I actually have glued the back part on with icing, so that is a solution. If you've made similar errors, it's not the end. Now there's a step in my recipe where it tells me to smooth this. Is that happening? Probably not. Let's do what we can. Let's just do what we can here. And then ambitiously, it has all of these beautiful swirls and designs and patterns you can use. A knife to make in the top. We're gonna settle for covered. And we're just gonna be happy with that. Through the beauty of lowering our expectations for ourselves. Okay. You can see on the camera, although not here, that there's a little gap, so I was trying to fill that in. There's a teeny amount of icing. You know what? You probably still should make the double recipe because this is spread pretty thin, but it will work. If you don't have enough for the double, you can make the single. You'll just have a very thin layer of icing. Yeah, this covers it. Look at that. I'm gonna say, good enough. We have a fully iced cake. Oh, I missed a whole section in the front. Let's fix that. Glad I tilted that towards the camera, because it was not done. Okay. Now we have a fully iced cake. Beautiful, beautiful. So the only final step is to add Happy Birthday Harry on the top. And I'm going to ambitiously say, to make up for the other errors, I am going to spell Happy Birthday correctly. And we're going to do something right today, even a little bit. So let me grab my cheating green icing tube. You could have put green food dye into the rest of this if you wanted to use that instead. I just bought icing. I'm lazy like that. Here we go. Okay, this is a questionable tube of icing I have purchased. Oh, here it goes. Just needed a second to get started. Maybe start by practicing on parchment. See, I'm learning all sorts of lessons for you. Yeah, practicing this beforehand would have been really smart. But I looked at the icing on that cake in the movie. Did not feel like Hagrid had practiced. So we're going to call this true to the book and to the movie. There we go. It's going along. I have never been known for my penmanship, so this is pretty, honestly, if I was writing this with a pen, it just wouldn't be much better. So, we're fine. Happy, we have finished the word happy. We're boldly trying birthday. It's a long word. It's not that easy. Ooh, I just got a perfect dot on my eye. Not intentional, but we can pretend that it was. Birth. Ooh, this is a lot of words. We're getting there. Birth is done. Now we got to get through day. Yep. Oh, we did it. Okay, Harry, most crucial part. We're going to spell it right. H. Not an easy letter to do in icing because you've got to double back. A. R. R. And now, crucially, the Y. Let's add an exclamation point. We're going to be fancy. I'm really good at these dots. I'm really bad at everything else. Okay, it's a beautiful cake. It's a gorgeous cake. Flip that around. Sorry, you can see the part where the cake died. Pretend you can't see it. Happy birthday, Harry. We've done it. We have iced our cake. We're gonna eat this, and it's gonna taste much better than it looks. So let's just take a moment and enjoy this creation. We made it, despite many mistakes. Okay, so I thought about it and I felt guilty for leaving on such a shoddy cake, so I thought I'd try out some of the actual instructions that are provided in the book, and we'll see if I can do things maybe a little bit better for frosting this time. If not, we'll have another lovely cake. So there we go. We have made our Happy Birthday Harry cake. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully your cake turned out well. Please tell us in the comments how it went. Have a great day.